Hello everyone, welcome back. So till now we have covered about the basic of ACE and ESQL, and I hope you have a better understanding on IBM ACE. Now we will move toward the all the connectors and the toolbox that present in the IBM ACE, and we will cover each one of them in detail. So you don't need to worry about the anything. Okay, so let's cover this in this lecture series. Let's cover the IBM MQ nodes, and this is a part of connector. So in IBM MQ node we have the total 6 node: MQ input node, MQ output node, MQ reply node, MQ get node, MQ header node, and MQ publication node. If you go to the toolkit, this is the toolkit I have, and if I will open any message flow, suppose this message flow, and in this message flow if you go, there are two part. First is called toolbox and second is called connector. As the name suggests, toolbox, this is used for the uh, transformation and routing, and it is used for not connecting the application, while connector is used to connect the different application like AWS, IBM MQ, and Coupa, and the database, and lots of, you can see there are lots of connector here. So we will cover the most important from, because it is not possible to cover all the connector. It will be a huge connector, and the way it is connecting, mostly it are the same for the apart from the few. So the most important one we are going to discuss here, or in this lecture series I am going to cover the IBM MQ connector. Okay, so if you go to the IBM MQ, you can see there is called option called IBM MQ. Okay, if you expand this, under this you can see we have the option MQ input, MQ output, MQ reply, MQ get, MQ header, and MQ publication. Apart from that, there are two things like FTP input and FTP output. These are not much important. I have never seen that this use of this. So mostly the most important, these are the five, and among those all five, the input and MQ input and MQ out are the very frequently used. Okay, so we will learn these all thing in detail, so you don't need to worry about that. Okay, if you don't know a basic about this. Okay, so these are the 5 note I have written here in my notebook. Okay, so let's understand the use of each one of them. Okay, so when talking about the MQ input node, it is used to get the message from the MQ. So if you want a message to be read from the MQ queue, then you can use the MQ input node. The MQ input node reads the message from a queue. MQ output node send or writes a message to a queue. MQ reply node is used to send a reply back to the requester, or used to send a response to the originator of the input message. So those who have sending a message, they actually, if they are expecting a response back, then we can use the MQ reply. Now coming to MQ get, it is similar to MQ input, but it is mostly used in the mid of the flow, and it is used to retrieve the message from a queue in more a specific way, typically for the polling purpose. Okay, MQ header is used to add, modify, or delete the MQ MD or the MQ dead letter header. So if you want to if you want to add, modify, or delete the MQMD header or the MQ DLH header, then you can use the MQ header node. Further, MQ publication node, as name suggests publication, so it is used to publish a message to the IBM MQ topic. So these all are the 5 node, and we will be 6 node, and we will be covering each one of them in detail. Now let's start with the MQ input and MQ output. Okay, so MQ input is used to receive message from IBM MQ, and MQ output is used to send message to IBM MQ. And basic flow about the using the MQ input and MQ output, I have covered a very lot. Okay, so till now all the flow I have explained to you by using the MQ input and MQ output itself. So I don't think you have, I am expecting you have a at least a basic knowledge how basically we use on the MQ input and MQ output. Now mostly I will be focusing on the explaining the properties of the MQ input and MQ output and how basically it works. Okay, so now let's create a application from the scratch. Okay, so let me just click on application and IBM MQ node app. Just I'm writing any name. If you want to select a library for error handling, you can select, or we can create from the scratch. That's not a big issue. And let me just write the MQ based flow using MQ node. You can use schema or you can leave it default, that's no problem. Now let's go to the IBM MQ section. From here, let's select the MQ input node and MQ output node. Okay, now MQ input node and MQ output node and compute node. Okay, compute node I'm just selecting for the basic transformation. Okay, let's connect the compute node, and let's, in this lecture I will be not focusing on the concept of ESQL because I will be not expanding in the upcoming all lectures. My focus will be explaining the connectors and the toolbox, how basically it works. My focus will be less on the explaining the concept of ESQL because the concept of ESQL I already explained in very deep and detail. So I don't think it will be it will be more important for you to explain the each of the ESQL concept again. It will only take the more time. So if you are still facing some issue uh, on the ESQL part, try to relearn it again lecture and try to practice some questions, so because it will be a hands-on for you. Okay, and if still you are facing some issue with some challenges, you can try to reach out to me. I will try to explain the concept. Okay, now let me add one more output node as exception queue. So this is how I am doing the error handling thing. Okay, so now let me say in the first do the compute thing. So in compute node I don't want to do much extra coding. I just want to do simple forwarding the message, a set output route is equal to input route. Okay, that's all. So whatever the message coming to input, everything, and properties I am sending to output, everything. Okay, and here let me say write some error handling, or instead of writing these or error handling, I can directly use the library. So let me use a library itself, that will be helpful. So let me just shared library, let me select it, shared library, apply and close, refer the shared library. Now let me use the shared library. Okay, now it is used. Now let me just, okay, so this I have connected this one, and the failure queue is, what is the failure? Error dot queue. That's fine, good. Now, so everything is done. So we have used a one MQ input, one MQ output, and one compute node, and one error handling library. And this is very simple. If you open this one, I am taking message through input, and I am just doing basic error handling like set output to dot explain error detail exception is equal to input exception is. So I'm just reading error detail from the exception tree and just sending to output. That's all I am doing. Now let's focus on MQ input and MQ output. So mostly we have seen that we have already learned how can we transfer a message from MQ input to MQ output using the ESQL, these all thing. Okay, in this lecture we will be focusing on the all these properties, these all you can see, all the properties, these all properties, what exactly does, I will be focusing on this thing. Okay, in compute node I have written a very basic code like that, set output root is equal to input root. So whatever the message coming to input, it will be going to output. That's all. Now let's come to MQ input node. If you see MQ input node, we have the first as a description. In description we have the node name. Node name is the MQ node, and you can write later something. Short description is the, you can write anything like that. This is used to read message from queue. Okay, and if you want to give a long description in some paragraph, then you can write here. Okay, in basic, if you see, we have to give the queue name. What is this queue name? And you can see here it is a star mandatory, it is mandatory. If you will not give it, this error will not going to, you will see the error. Okay, so this queue name is the queue from each our MQ input node is going to read the message. You know, the currently this broker is associated with the queue manager QMA1, right? Under that we have the many queue, the from which queue you want the application to read message, then you have to use. Suppose I want the test 14, there is a test 14, right? Okay, let me just sort by name. So this test 14.in as a input key, and test 14.out as a output queue. So this is the queue from message will be read, and this is the queue message will be going to write. Okay, so let me mention here the test 14.t. So from this queue, if any application is going to send a message to this queue test 14.in, then the message is going to consume and it is going to write to MQ output. And in MQ output, where message we are going to writing, we are writing to the test 14.out. Okay, so the queue in basic we have to mention the queue name from which MQ input is going to read the message. Okay, the use of MQ input is to, it is used to read a message from a queue. You can see what is the queue name we are mentioning here? So whatever the queue name we are mentioning here, if any message will be present in that queue, then it is going to read the message from that queue, and further it is going to process to the message flow. Now further we have the MQ output. In MQ output, if you see, we have a similar thing. It is description mentioned here. You can write some description like that. This is used to write message to queue. So the use of MQ output is to write the message to a queue. So whatever the message written here, read from the queue, it will further process, and after processing whatever the result will came here, it will be written to the queue name that we mention here in the basic. So the message will be written to this queue and it will finally visible here. Let me first clear the message. I think there are few messages already. Okay. Now consider a situation. So we are, with the help of MQ input node, we can read a message from a queue. With the help of MQ output node, we can write a message to a queue. So when an application sends a message to this queue, in test 14.in, we will mention that queue as this queue is mentioned into the MQ input node basic property. So we will read the message from this queue and we will process it later for the further transformation. Post transformation, whatever the logic we written in the compute node, whatever the result will came, okay, it will be going to the MQ output, and whatever the queue name we have mentioned into the basic of the MQ output, it is going to write the message to that queue. Now, so that's the basic property. Now further, if you go to the further MQ connections, the next property, if you see here, there are many three options present here: local queue manager, MQ client connection property, and the client channel definition table, CCDT. As we are working on locally, we are not using any client connection, so we can use select the local connection. Further, if you select on the MQ client connection property, it will ask you to give a many information like destination queue manager name, queue manager host name, port name, channel name, SSL, these all things. Okay, so you can try with that thing also. Okay, so if you will select this option, then you have to give these all information. Okay, further, if you select the client channel definition table, then you have to, it will be like that, and you have to give this information, the queue manager name. Okay, so you can try with that information, but currently I am working locally, so I will select the local queue manager here. Okay, further, if you go, the next property of the MQ input is the input message parsing. Input message parsing having the two important property. First is the message domain and second is the message model. Okay, if you scroll, if you drop down here, you can see lots of option present here. This thing already I have discussed in very detail in the while discussing the MQ node things. Okay, but again I will be trying to recap the thing. So MQ domain is the in MQ domain, basically we mention the parser, what format basically our MQ input node is going to parse the message. Okay, because our MQ node has a capability that we can restrict the parsing of message according to the message format, and further according to the data type and the message format, you can say that. You can, Okay. Now, so whatever the domain you mention here, in that domain only it can accept the message, and if and anything apart from that it is going to reject. And if you leave it by default, suppose if I am not mentioning here anything, it will take by default as a blob, and blob is the, and any format source is going to send a message to MQ input, it will allow, because blob is whatever the message source will send, it will basically converted into the hexadecimal, because of the blob we are selecting as a message domain. So either you can select blob or you can leave it by default, because you can see select a domain to use, or when no domain is present the message default is blob. Okay, so if you will not mention here anything, it will take by default as a blob, and when it is take as a, when it will take as a blob, it will parse every type of message, it will parse any type of message, there will be no error will be going to shown here. Okay, now, okay, so if you see here, there are lots of options here. Say here DFDL. If you want only the text message to be parsed, therefore that we have to select DFDL. If you want to parse only XML message, therefore we have the XML NSE and the XML NS. XML NSE basically takes the low memory, and XML NS takes the high memory. So best option is the XML NSE. Data object for data from the web API parameter, JSON for the JSON message, for blob for the any message, any format message. There is, if there is message, if we don't know the if we don't know the which format source is going to send, then we can select as a blob message. Further, MIME for the MIM verb data including the multipart, MRM for the binary or text message. Okay, JMS for the JMS map message if it is also a part of XML. Okay, and further JMS stream also a part of XML, it is a JMS stream message. The most widely used the message domain is the DFDL, XML NSE, JSON and blob. These four are the widely used message domain. Most of the flow in the IT industry you are going to see from these all four format. But it is not that, that if these are the most important, there cannot be possible with the other format. There can be possibility that you can see the form, the other domain can be used, but most of the flow I have seen that belongs to these four: DFDL, XML NSE, JSON and blob. Okay, now, if I will select the blob here, then it is going to parse any type of message. Okay, if I will select XML NSE here, okay, so it will only parse the XML message. Okay, if I will select here JSON, so it will only parse the JSON message. If I will select here some DFDL, so it will only parse the text message. Okay, so these all thing you need to understand the thing. Okay, let me first select the XML NSE. Okay, and further here if you see, we have an option called most message model, right? So what is message model? Here we have specified that the which format of message our MQ input node is going to parse the message, right? But we have not specified what format of message it is going to allow. Okay, suppose if you see here, currently I have a small message. Okay, this is a message that's related to bank detail. So here is the bank detail, under we have the customer name, account number, IFC code and the branch, right? And if you see, this is the character, this is some integer type, big integer, this is called also an integer, and this is something character, right? Combination of letter and the numeric value. Okay, but if you will not, if you want that my message flow will understand this as a if you want my message flow will understand this as a numeric value, this as a this as an integer value, this as an integer value, this as a string value, and this as a string value. And message, if you are sending a message format apart from this, it will not accept. It will only accept the message format in this format, with having the complex, with having the parent as a bank detail and the child has a customer name, account name, branch code, IFC code, and the branch code. If you want, if the source application will send the message exactly like this with different value, then it will only parse the message. And if we can also do the control over that, this can be only integer, this can be only integer, and this can be only string, this can be only string. Okay, so these all limitation we can apply with the help of message domain. So message domain, if I say in definition, if definition, message model typically includes a schema that defines the structure and the format of message that are being to process. So what is the structure and the format of message that actually our MQ input node is going to parse, that can be done with the help of message model. I will be showing you with the message model creation, so don't need to worry about that. Just understand the first concept. Okay, so message model is a structure and a format that tells what will be going to be a structure of the input message and what will be the data type is going to for the input message. If the source application is going to send a message, any structure that is not exactly that, then it is going to fail the message, it is not going to accept the message. Okay, so I will be covering this thing later. Okay, before that, let's cover on the first is the next is the parsing option. Parsing option already seen. Now let's next is the advance. In advance we have the transaction mode, yes, no, and automatic. Okay, this is used mainly when we have the uh, exception is not handled. So here you can see my exception is handled. We have the exception handling code sum. If in case of exception is not handled, then this will work. We will show how basically it work in case we are selecting yes, in case we are selecting no, in case we are selecting automatic. Okay, next is the parsing option. In parsing option we have the parsing timing, and parsing timing we have the on demand, complete, and the immediate. So what is going to happen when we select the on demand, what is going to happen when we select the immediate, and what is going to happen when we select the complete. Okay, so let's start with the first parsing option and the on demand. Okay, so what is the order we are going to follow, that I have already written here somewhere. Okay, so order we are going to follow, first I will be testing the basic flow. Okay, further we will understand the parsing domain, XML and AC domain, then parsing option, then we are going to see the transaction mode and then validation, these all things. Okay, now let's first understand the, let me first understand the this as a parsing timing. Okay, before understanding the parsing timing, let me just create, as my flow is completed, let me first create a message bar file and let me test the flow whether it is now working or not. Okay, let me create a bar file.